And we are live. Welcome everyone to UBU Live. It's Sunday, May 18th at 4 p.m. Eastern. My name is William Rochelle, but you can call me Bill, and I have the pleasure of being with Lewis Katz. Hey, Lewis.
Hey, how are you, man?
I am excellent. Part of what stood out to me was everyday courage and
Yeah.
on your profile. And one of the
Okay.
reasons why that stood out, I was actually speaking with Kenneth Dunner while you and I were setting everything up, is people think that I am an extrovert when in all actuality I am an introvert. And every time it goes live, I'm like, okay, on. 2 seconds before it goes live, I'm shaking. And as
Really?
as as you know, because I just told you, I'm very authentic people, so excuse my candor. But I always have to use the restroom, or I was like, "Where's my water?" And is Scott going to show up? All those things go through my mind.
Right?
Um, but fortunately, it's been successful, and each time I've gone on a live, it has introduced me to a new way of thinking,
Uh-huh.
a different perspective, and a new thought. So that's what attracted me to your profile. And the courage inside is how you kind of tag yourself. So
Yep.
let's talk about that for like a second and kind of dig into that deeper. What drove you to this mission?
It's something that has kind of run through my life, the whole time of seeing people around me who you would definitely know that they're courageous. Um, it originally, for me personally, it started in my 20s. I was a cross country runner, and my
Oh, wow.
buddy Bernard and I used to go on these runs that we called the Courage Run. I think he came up with that. And there was a 4 mile, there was an 8 mile, and at the end there was either one ginormous hill, or on the long one there were two. And it was a reminder, like, hey, most people would look at this hill and they're going to turn around and not go up.
Right.
But for us, it was that was probably the most enjoyable part of the run.
So basically overcoming your fear, having the courage to go up that mountain that most people would shy away from.
Absolutely.
So how do you take that practice into your daily life, and then how do you help other people identify their courage inside?
So if you notice my background image, these Army guys, they are the U.S. Army parachute team, the Golden Knights.
Okay.
And I have flown with them. I haven't jumped, but I've photographed them in the plane and jumping out of the plane. And it's a big part of my keynote. I talk about the Golden Knights and being up at 10,000 feet, and that you don't have to jump out of an airplane to be courageous.
Right.
Right? Now, I don't want to dilute the term of courage, because I think we like to do that, right? We like to take these lofty terms and then say, "Oh, I'm that." Um, what I'm what I'm bringing forward is that we can be whoever we are. Okay,
I agree with that.
we can tap our core traits and our core values as individuals and as companies or organizations, and so let's tap into that. And I talk about clarify, or I'm sorry, identify, clarify, and amplify. So in other words, turn it inwards. Look
Right.
at Let's look at who we are, and then let's assess our strengths and our weaknesses. Not every weakness is a superpower, contrary to what you might think, looking at articles on LinkedIn, right?
Right.
Uh, but if we could identify those traits and those values and put them to work for us, the ones that are the ones that can be utilized as strength. And again, it doesn't have to be a big deal. It could be a small bold move. Um, you had asked me about kind of the tools that I use on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got something called the 1 minute leap. And this thing, so this actually came to me fairly recently, and it blew my mind because I've been, I've been doing a lot, and I've been feeling fragmented, and I've been feeling like, oh my God, I'm so overwhelmed with all these things I have to do.
Right.
And it's like, oh, I have to read a book. I love books, but probably the past 20, 25 years, I've been too distracted to read a book. And, people are saying, oh, you got to read this book. So I thought, okay, I'm committing to read the book. And I realized, and this might sound really basic to you, but let me know what you think.
Right.
You don't have to sit down and read the whole book or half the book or the whole chapter. Like, you can be sitting at your computer and you're working on something, and it's like, oh, I'm going to read 2 pages of the book while this website is loading, or you write whatever. So taking advantage of small breaks to take steps. Okay, so I call it the 1 minute leap.
Yep.
And it's about taking action.
I get that. A lot of people look at a book and they're like, it's 300 pages or 500 pages. And that alone seems like a huge task. But if you do it 1 page at a time,
Yep.
you can read 4 pages and then the next 5 tomorrow and then 20 the next day. You don't need to read the entire book in one sitting. And I
You
think
don't.
I believe that you're onto something there, because a lot of us, we are looking at the big picture, like cleaning your house, and you're like, oh my God, it's a mess. But you
Right.
start with the sock in the corner, and then you work your way out. You don't look at the entire mess. You look at a section, and you take it one item at a time, and that makes it easier in my head to digest than looking at the overall task, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. Now, again, this knowledge is out there, and people have told me in the past, well, look, just do an hour, just do 30 minutes, right? But I'm the captain of Team Shiny Objects.
Me too.
Okay. Right? So even sometimes 15 minutes is too long. So I'm thinking, gosh, what about a minute? I can handle a minute. And so and then it's like, oh, some of these things take 10 seconds. What if I take 10 seconds? And then so here's the tricky part, okay? So put your fingers in your ears. This is top secret info. No, you can.
I can hear you.
Right, but when you take those 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and you start the thing, even those of us who are like butterflies, we get to the minute mark and we got sucked in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Now we spend the 15 or the 30 or the 60 and we do it.
I 100% agree. I that resonates with me a lot. And it's getting started that is the pressure point. Once you get started, sometimes you just get sucked in, and all of a sudden it's 2 hours later and you're like, wow, where did all the time go? Because you weren't thinking about the task anymore. You were just in the task, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. My arch nemesis for 40 plus years has been the chromatic harmonica. Uh, I've
Okay.
picked it up, I put it down, I picked it up, I put it down. Now I play the harmonica, and I'm pretty good.
Do you
Not
want to play
great.
some now?
Sure. You want me to play the one I know or the one I'm learning?
Do the one, whichever one you feel comfortable with. You be you.
All right, so that's the one I know pretty good.
That was awesome.
Now this one. So this guy. Now, but let me tell you about that. The one that I do know. The way that I learned it is that my freshman college buddy at Humboldt State, his name's Dennis. At the end of the school year, I was going off to UC Santa Barbara, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to learn how to play the harmonica over the summer." Now I had harmonicas that my cousin gave me throughout the years, and they were just sitting in a box. And I said, "I'm going to learn it too." And
Nice.
so what did I do? I got to UC Santa Barbara, and I lived in an apartment with these amazing stairwells with the echo. And I just went out to the stairwells, and I would play for hours. Somehow I still got good grades, but I was out there, man. Right? And then after a while I thought, oh, I want to learn how to play the chromatic, which has a little slide button on the end. So you get the half steps between the notes. You could play any song and
Okay.
it's
You're
in there.
good.
But uh, it's a lot. This is like a whole different beast. I just kind of played some riffs that sound like I might know what I'm doing.
Well, it
But
sounded great to me.
well, you're kind, and um, what? So I'm taking that same principle that got me in depth with the diatonic or blues harp, and I'm applying it. I'm immersion. Okay. Now this is kind of the opposite in a way of the everyday courage, where I'm saying, hey, take a minute and act. This is more like, okay, yes, take that initial minute, and sometimes I only go practice for a minute, but it's still full immersion. Throw yourself completely into the thing. Okay. Now that's not going to be for everything. That's going to be for some things. And it's up to each of us to decide, well, this is where I'm going all in. And this, I might enjoy it, and I might always suck at it, but I'm going to do it.
So, how do you talk to people who suffer from anxiety and help them take that first minute? Because if you have anxiety, it really is an internal fear sometimes
Right.
of that first step. So, have you ever dealt with that, or dealt with someone who was suffering from that?
Um, so I think the first thing that I would want to know is whether it's a medical issue. And if it is a medical issue, and I suffer from anxiety, and I should probably follow my own advice, where it's like, you know what, go to the doctor and take medicine or meditate, or whatever the doctor that you trust tells you to do. Bite the bullet, do it. If it's garden variety anxiety, which I think we all suffer from,
I do.
it's baby steps. So it might be, and again, this is where the 1 minute leap, I think, is helpful, because it's not meant to be intimidating. It could be like, okay, open up that drawer that you threw the bills into and like open one of the bills.
Yeah.
Right. Don't even pay the bill. Just open it. Right. Look at it. Hold it. Um, I went to motorcycle school many years ago, and I was too scared to get on the track and ride, and so they had me walk up to one of the motorcycles. And they say, "Okay, now touch the gas tank. Now touch the handlebars." Right, and for somebody else, I think that would have worked miracles. For me, I was just dead set against it, but I was able to learn in that moment. Hey, it's today's not my day, but there's, just take it a step at a time. And eventually I got more comfortable.
So that brings a couple of questions to mind. Like, why did you go to motorcycle school if you were apprehensive about getting on a motorcycle?
It's funny because I had always wanted to ride a motorcycle, and it took me probably 20 years to actually get on one. And I took a motorcycle safety class, and by the end of, it was like a Saturday in a parking lot, for 6 weeks. And I wanted to do it the right way. So imagine going to this school, and I had invested, I don't know, $2,000 maybe in, leather jacket, leather pants, boots, helmet.
So you have the whole look, right?
I had the whole look, man.
Right.
I look like a ninja. And so now I got all this gear, and I'm thinking, well, I still don't really know how to ride a motorcycle. I guess I better go buy a motorcycle. I mean, nuts, right? Looking back, and so I bought myself pretty much my dream bike, which was a Ducati Monster 750. Okay,
that's more of it's not a riding bike, it's more of a sports bike, right? You lean forward on it.
It's what you would call a cafe racer, like a naked bike. It's just kind of a standard motorcycle without, like, it didn't have all the, the fairings and all the, racy looking. It wasn't a racing bike.
Okay.
But, for people who know motorcycles, like Ducati is kind of synonymous with fast.
Yeah, that's what I
was not fast. But I bought this bike, and then I was kind of too scared to ride it. And it took me several months before I got comfortable to ride it. And then you couldn't get me off it. I was on that thing like 6 days a week. And then I got a bigger bike. And I was always on that bike. And you know what, though? I was always scared. Every time I got on it, I was petrified, like big time. But it was also fun.
I get that 100%. I get that 100%. And part of my mission for me is to overcome those fears. So I just told you, every time I go live, I'm freaked out. It's interesting because I actually created more episodes of UBU Live. So I have Cousin Talk, and then I have, special features like with Lanier Johnson and recruiters and candidates that are not on Sundays. And I did that because I started the podcast with a guy named Greg, and Greg called me and he said, "Hey, I can't do tomorrow. And I don't think I can do Sundays for a while." And I said, "Okay, that's fine. You be you."
Yep.
And I went live without him that Sunday for the first time, and nobody showed up. So what I did, because that's a fear, throwing a party and having no one come, that's a legitimate fear, right? I ended up doing spinoff shows So I felt
Uh-huh.
comfortable alone. I started doing my thought of the day where I would just go live. And that has to do with your 1 second rule.
Yeah.
It I didn't think about it. I didn't have a script for my thought of the day. It was 1 minute.
Yep.
Today I learned that, you are all you need and trust yourself and understand that, you know, the force, I mean, whatever. It was just really a thought of the day. And it was whatever came to me when that camera went on. Um, and that allowed me to kind of be okay with just being myself and being alone. Um, Yesterday, and I love my brother. He's fantastic. I had cousin talk, and right now, all the cousins my age, their children are
Mhm.
going to prom and they're graduating right now, and they're also going on college tours, right?
Yeah.
So yesterday, my ride or die didn't show up. He couldn't show up. I knew that in advance, but I had a couple of other people scheduled, and one was a no show and one couldn't log in. So my brother heard me talking to myself and
Uh-huh.
jumped on. But I was proud of myself, Lewis,
Yep.
because when those cameras went live, I didn't cancel the event.
No.
I kept rolling and I said, I'm expecting people to come in and they'll be here soon. And my brother, you gotta love him. He said, send me the link. I'll be the person that you talk to, and then everyone else started showing up. But it is I'm always afraid. Like you said, every time you get on that motorcycle, you were afraid, but you did it anyway. E-
Yes.
Every time I put this on, I ask myself, is it going to resonate with anyone? Am I going to be the only person that is watching? And then after the fact, because sometimes the LinkedIn feed doesn't really feed over to StreamYard, and I
Right.
see all the comments and the number of impressions that I've gotten, and then it continues to rise after the replay. So I'm happy with the results, but I'm petrified every day. But I do
It
it.
No, absolutely. Let me ask you a question. Are you afraid that if you show up not afraid that it's not going to be as good?
No, you want to know why? Because
Yeah.
right now I have no fear. Right
Okay.
now, I'm having a conversation with you, and it feels very organic and it's natural. We're just talking.
We're
I
just
l-
talking.
I literally forget that there's an audience out there or people that will be looking at it. It's something about when once I go live, I'm in a different mindset.
Right.
And I was explaining this to Kenneth Dunner earlier. It's like once I'm off, then I'm exhausted. It's very, very weird. And I used to do you're a keynote speaker, right?
Yes.
So I used to do not keynote speaking, but live trainings in front of 250 people,
Yep.
or board presentations. And there's this energy that you have to get from inside in order to be magnetic when you're on the stage.
Correct.
And once you're done, once you've finished those handshakes, even though all you've done is stand for an hour and talk, you are depleted. At least I was every single time.
I think if you're doing it properly, then yes.
Yeah, because it's not natural. But but I'm the guy that is totally afraid. But if they say, "Hey, we don't have an announcer," I'll say, "Give me the mic," and I can go up there and just like, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Lewis Katz,
Yep.
the author of this and the author of that. As long as I know what I'm supposed to say, I
Uh-huh.
can do it. And then I get off the stage and I'm like, I can't believe I did that. And it's like when I'm on, I'm not really recognizing what I'm doing.
Right.
And I can't focus on individuals because you and I just talked about shiny objects. So I'm always in my head. So if
Uh-huh.
I focus on an individual and that individual's on the phone, I am more likely to get distracted. and
Oh,
and
uh-huh.
and and feel as if I'm not resonating. So what I normally will do, if I do focus on someone, it's someone who looks like they are really engaged,
Yes,
and then I'm talking to them.
exactly.
But if you're on your phone and I'm up there giving it up my all, I not intentionally, my friend, but
Yeah.
unintentionally will say, "Am I boring you?"
I mean, will you say that out loud or are you thinking it?
I've I've done it before. In in
That's
in
so
in
cool.
in a
That's
joke
courageous, man.
in a joking manner,
It's
in a
still, I
joking
know,
manner.
it's still, yeah.
I did it in a job interview once because uh which I didn't get the job, by the way. But the hiring manager brought me in to meet with her and the people that would be reporting into me.
Yeah.
And although I was speaking to the three subordinates, and I hate using that word, but I don't know the right way to say it. The
Uh-huh.
team members, they were actually department heads of their own, but they
Yeah.
would be reporting into this role. She was on her phone the whole time. And then at one point she yawned, and I literally stopped and I said, "Am I boring you? Like, what is this?" But she laughed, the team laughed, and she was like, "No, no, no, no." But I also found it. I am very aware
Hmm.
of whether or not someone's giving me their full attention or not. So when I'm speaking to you, I make direct eye contact. I'm
Yep.
focused on you. I'm not looking around. I'm not looking at my phone. I hate my Apple Watch because sometimes it'll ding, and then your natural reaction
Oh,
is to like look down. But I'm not
yes.
looking. I'm not looking at the time or anything. Like, why did it just ding? So maybe I'll just take it off. But it, things like that, I try my best to give everyone 100% of me when we're in that moment. And I also believe, and then we're going to go back to you because it's not all about me. I also believe that I give everyone 100% of my time, no matter what their role is in life. So whether or not you are a CEO or the person that's collecting the trash at the end of the day, if you have a question for me, I am 100% dialed in and focused, and I'm going to listen.
That's as it should be.
That is how it should be. You want to freak somebody out? Have them ask you a question and then turn around and give them your undivided attention. And a lot of people were like, wait a minute, I'm not used to that because most people are talking to me while they're scrolling.
No, when you mentioned the watch, it made me laugh because I do the same thing and it drives my wife nuts because we'll be talking and then my watch will beep and I'm like this and it's never anything important.
Yeah.
Uh, but but there it is. And we're living in a time in which we're pulled in many different directions. And even for those lucky people who are very focused and attentive, there's a lot of pull in a lot of different directions.
Yeah. And you and I share that same thing, the shiny object. I
Yeah.
am not focused and attentive. I have to be intentional.
Right.
I like I just took off my watch. I have to understand what's going to sidetrack me and then put it to the side so that I can be 100% dialed in. Um, Dinners, everything. I turn off my phone when I'm having dinner with my family. I turn off my phone when I'm at a
Yeah.
restaurant. There's no one. I have my children on a separate kind of thing. So if they call, I'll get that. But anything else, I'm not going to get it. And that's only because, they could need something.
Exactly. Well, I sold my IT business after 23 years, and I mean there's some overlap, but basically that was back in January, and shortly after that, I got rid of my old cell phone number that I had had for 25 years, maybe.
That didn't kill
And
you.
what's that?
That didn't freak you out?
I was so ready to do it.
Okay.
And you know what? So that's why, like, my phone isn't nearly as much of a distraction because I'm not on all the lists yet.
Right.
And so it's like, wow, this is pretty cool. And I give the new phone number to the critical people from my past, and then everybody else is like, oh, you know what? They can find me through. I also got rid of my old email address that everybody had,
Right.
and that was kind of interesting. Um, and it got peaceful.
So talk to me about you just sold your IT company?
I did.
What was it? Can you talk about what type of industry it was in? Because IT is a very broad.
No,
Uh,
this is true, and I tell people that I sold it because I was suffering from IT PTSD. Uh,
okay.
but I was kind of like I used to say that I was a glorified level one tech. I did a lot of help desk for small businesses and consumers. The biggest client had 26 users.
Okay.
Okay. And I was doing Mac and PC, and it actually wasn't that stressful, to be honest. Like I didn't have the kind of the do or die kind of clients where if something went wrong, somebody might lose their life, or it wasn't
Yeah.
the stake. Now for the clients it felt like that, and I treated them
Like
like,
that.
I took I took my job very personally. um but over time I realized, gosh, this is just a job for me. It's a good job as far as jobs go, but I was at a crossroads. My wife and I had left Los Angeles. We moved to Boise. I had some
How
techs.
long were you in Los Angeles?
Oh man, pretty much my whole life. Like,
Me
you know.
too.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Now where are you now?
I'm in the Miami area, so I'm in between Fort Lauderdale and Miami in
Oh, you're in
Hollywood.
Hollywood.
Yeah. Yeah. Right in the middle.
Yeah, and I was in the other Hollywood.
I was too. I lived in Studio City and then worked in Beverly Hills for JDate, created all their back end support systems and customer service and travel and events. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they're pretty
What,
big. And
J-Date?
yeah,
You don't look Jewish to me.
you don't have to be Jewish to work at JDate. But I spend a lot of time in Israel. I have a lot of Jewish friends. I really appreciate the community,
Uh-huh.
and that's the focus. But JDate actually it's called Spark Networks. We own 30 different websites. So we had JDate, we had Christian Mingle, we had Silver Single. So it wasn't only JDate, but
Right.
JDate was our flagship. We didn't have to advertise or anything because the community just rallied around it. So it
Yeah.
was great. And so I left there in 2007 and then moved
Uh-huh.
to Dallas. So that's kind of my trek. But I was there from 2000 2007. That was the heyday of online dating when it really was something. People were getting married and sending us pictures of their
Oh yeah.
children, and it was pretty big. And they're still around. They're still doing well, from what I hear.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't know if they're still on that trajectory because it was like a hockey puck. Wait, hockey stick. The
Yep.
the trajectory.
Well, my wife and I met on dating.com, and see, I was working for an ad agency in Studio City,
Okay.
and we were pitching to one of these dating websites, and so the owner of the ad agency had anybody who was single on staff, and it was a small company. Uh, he had us get accounts on that online dating service, and that's how I met my wife.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We're still together.
What year was that?
That was 2000.
Yeah. So it's interesting because when I was doing it in my career, I've always been in emerging growth businesses, and I've
Mhm.
always been the guy that created the blueprint. I was never handed a blueprint. So people would ask me, do people really date online? And I'm like, yes. And now it's the only way people are through social media and online is how people are really connecting. Not as much as they in my day, you would go out to a bar or a club and or church
Yeah.
or some type of social event and you would meet people. Um, I've never this is so I created the entire uh, logic and the training behind the customer service team, and they were called consultants.
Right.
I've never dated online.
That's
Never,
hilarious.
never. I haven't. I created the travel and events department. And when I say I created it just really means that there was nothing there. And
Mhm.
once customer service was rolling and they were making money, became a profit center, I was listening to the customers and they wanted to start meeting offline. So in 2000, when I
Mhm.
started, shortly after that, I think 2001 was 9/11.
Yep.
So we saw a tremendous push because people wanted to connect, but everyone was afraid to go anywhere, especially Los Angeles, because we were the only place that wasn't hit.
Right.
Not the only place, I'm sorry, but
You're
we were a huge hub, and everyone was like, "It's going to come here next. It's going to come here next." And are you familiar with Beverly Hills?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
So we were on Wilshire and San Vicente. So this is this big building, 8383 Wilshire. It looks like a big X.
I
Um,
know where you're talking about.
yeah, so we were there, and there was a Bank of America at the ground floor, and we would look outside, and we would literally see like robot. I'm gonna say dogs, but they weren't dogs. They were like going in to look for bombs, and they were like, you have to
Oh,
evacuate
right.
the building. But this was all within the first 2 or 3 weeks of 9/11. But
Yeah.
about 2 years later, just like COVID, everyone wanted to get back outside. So we created the travel and events area. And we took people all around the world and we
Uh-huh.
created parties in all the big cities and specifically geared towards Jewish singles. And then we took them to, we didn't take them, but we planned trips to Israel.
Uh-huh.
And people began to actually create their vacation model around our itinerary. So it became known that we were always going to do something Labor Day weekend, Memorial Day weekend, and then something between Christmas and New Year's
Right.
because the Jewish community doesn't really celebrate Christmas. So they're always like, we have this time off. What do we do? And so we would go on a cruise. Um, and then there'd be one ski trip. And that's the only thing that wasn't nailed down to a specific date, but
Right.
it was sometime going to be in January or February that we'd go on a ski trip. But it was great. I don't know how we got on this topic, but let's go back to courage.
Yes. Well, no, absolutely. But I mean, it's fun to kind of trip down memory lane like that. And well, oh, I think the way we got there is because I was talking about um, selling my
California. Oh yeah,
business,
yeah.
and then meeting my wife online, um, and so I don't consider myself a courageous person. Let's just get that out of the way.
You came on here without hesitation. That's pretty courageous.
At the last minute. But no,
Yeah,
and you got look, you're doing something right because you've got like 30,000 plus subscribers to your newsletter, and I'm pretty excited that I mean I almost don't want to admit the number, but it's not 30,000, okay? Uh, I know it's just a number,
Yeah.
and I think as we do things in life, if we're wanting to if we're wanting to commercialize whatever it is we're doing, we want to make a few bucks. We we got to bring value to the other
Yeah.
people. Not just be the beautiful people that we are. Uh, is did
That's
I?
questionable. That's questionable on my end.
Well, no,
You're beautiful too.
I mean, I'm almost ashamed to say it in your presence, but I do stand up as well, so I make sure to let people
How did
know.
you get into that?
It's funny because it's something that many years ago I would fantasize about doing it, but I didn't actually do it because I felt, I knew that you have to do show prep, and I didn't
Right.
like to do it. Um, and then, when I got involved in doing photography for the military, uh, I ended up meeting a lot of comics, like veterans who went from the military into comedy as um, essentially a way to save their own lives. And so I was around that. And I used to go around saying that I was a comedian without portfolio because people laugh. And a couple of years ago, I was in a BNI meeting, networking meeting, and the guy I was talking to, I was actually on his mailing list for previously for he hosted an open mic, and I was talking to him, and I mentioned the open mic, and he said, "Oh, we're having one tonight. You should come." I said, "Yeah, I'll come check it out." And he said, "No, come do it." And I'm like, "Okay." And oh man, you want to talk about anxiety? So I came prepared with 4 pages of notes, right? And I thought it was hilarious. And I got up there, and first of all, my stomach is doing flips. Um, my hands are shaking like this, right? I can't even read my damn script.
Right.
And it wasn't funny, and people weren't laughing, and it was the room was full of comics. Okay, it wasn't, and only like maybe a dozen, and they were all into their own thing, and so everybody's like writing, and so it was a horrible disaster, and I was hooked.
There you go. It's interesting because I try to do notes for my thought
Mhm.
of the day.
Right.
Totally screwed it up. Totally screwed it up because I was reading
Yep.
and I felt like I was reading. And then when I missed my place in the script, I would fumble. So
Yep.
when it started getting good is when I threw my script away. And I think I told you this. I just go live and I don't know what I'm going to say until the thing goes boop. And like, this
Yep.
is my thought of the day. And I might have something in my head that I want to talk about, but I don't know what's going to come out until it actually goes live. So it's never written down. You and I are not scripted. Um,
Yep.
there are no notes. I just do better if I'm my authentic self. If I try to be anything else from that, um, I flounder.
Totally. And you know what? So you made me think of something, which is this, and this is a new thought that uh, what this might be the key to acting boldly and courageously, and this is what it is: lean into the train wreck.
Yep. Yep. I just remember when I said, the Greg didn't show up and I failed and I floundered. And then I just started doing it every day.
Yep.
Because there was a point where I was like, this was that show was so bad that I was like, I'm gonna give up.
Uh huh.
I'm not doing that again until Greg's back. And then I'm like, well, I don't want to lean on someone else for me to do what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I just turned on the camera the next day
Yeah.
and just went for it by myself, just talking, just looking at the camera and saying, so my thought is X. And then, on Saturday, I called my cousin, and then Kenneth Dunner, who is on here, who I
Uh-huh.
love. Um, he kind of started piggybacking and sharing my live streams, and would come and comment, and his team or his followers are so engaged that
Right.
it really helped me feel supported. So, I told you earlier, Kenneth and I were talking or texting, and he's like, "You're not shy. You're not an introvert." And I'm like, "Yeah, really, I am. I am. I can come on here and make it happen." But, leading up to this, I'm just like a ball of nerves. So leaning into the train wreck,
Yeah.
I, I, I think that that's something that we all need to do. You
Right.
know,
That's a book right there, man. But
let's write it, or you write it, and I'll do the what do we call it, the preamble or the forward.
yeah, cool.
I'll
Now,
just
how fun would that be? I mean, that would
Yeah,
make sense, right? Because it was born here today on UBU. Oh, look, and here's Kenneth.
yeah.
Uh,
Kenneth is my
O'Connor.
main man. I'm like,
You keep
honest.
mentioning him, and I'm thinking, wait, I should know who he is, but I don't. And hey, Kenneth. Uh, but no, we will. I'm going to follow Kenneth.
You
Uh,
should. You should. He's pretty awesome, and I am appreciative just having him in my corner. So go ahead. Sorry.
no, that's okay. But yeah. So now I will say this about the stand up. So 2 years in, I am Boise's oldest and least funny comic. Uh, but
Find that to be untrue, but go ahead.
it's well, no, I'm funny here, but and see that's the trick with stand up is that you got to get up in front of people and you've got to have it at least scripted enough to know kind of what your bullet points are,
Right, right. I can do that.
and you also have to come across as if you've never said it before. And boy, is that tough. But I tell you what, even doing stand up badly has helped me so much as a speaker. And it's ironic because I'll go do a keynote and I'll get more laughs at a keynote than in my stand up.
Well, because you're the only comedian on stage, right? So you're instead of doing it to a world of comedians. How did you become a keynote speaker, and how do you navigate that?
Um, so the way that so I'm reading Kenneth's comment. Yeah, absolutely, Kenneth. I mean, look at that grin, man. You did that. I'm just looking at that grin, and yeah, I want to know this guy.
Yeah,
Uh, so I was working with a coach, Dina Patton, who was like my sales and marketing business coach, uh, geared towards my IT business. And she was suggesting to me to speak to sell, a term I didn't know at the time, but basically saying, get in front of audiences and talk about cybersecurity, whatnot. And so that kind of planted the seed, and it just evolved over time. Uh, I wrote a chapter in an anthology called The Wildlife, and it is about entrepreneurs who do things their own way.
yeah,
And we had there was an event in Phoenix. It was kind of like a book launch, and I went there, and part of the event was, there were speakers, and but the speakers were talking about speaking, and that's where I learned the term "speak to sell," and so when I left that conference, I just started doing some research, and I found the National Speakers Association, and never mind where Scott is, Kenneth. You got me. I mean, I don't know if this is what you were expecting, but this is what you're getting.
You better leave Kenneth alone. I'm afraid of him sometimes. He has a spicy side.
No, that's okay. Bring it. I've been in roast battles. I've won and I've lost.
Uh
Mostly
oh.
lost.
You're not. Don't. No.
Mostly lost. Okay, that's where that's where one of our kind of veteran comics in Boise said that Lewis, you're like the only you're the only Jewish comic who's not funny.
It's kind of harsh.
No, it's totally harsh, and I took it personally. But I mean, he's a good guy, and I he wouldn't say it if it wasn't true, and but I'm using it as fuel, and so I feel like I've kicked it up a level
Good.
recently. Yeah.
Good.
So yeah. Look, I must have scared Kenneth, but
No, nothing scares Kenneth. Nothing scares Kenneth.
but
He's
yeah,
just,
I'm gonna follow him. Dude, what were we talking about?
that's the beauty of it. Who knows?
Who knows? It's um it's oh, look at that. Oh yeah. Kenneth,
you're,
I'm coming onto your show, man.
you're not gonna win it. I promise.
No, you know what?
No. Kenneth, do you want to come on with your camera off and talk? We can do that. Um, so your life is so interesting. I love the stand-up comedy. I love the fact that you just sold your business. How are you feeling now that you sold your business 5 months in?
Oh man, I I'm so relieved, and
Really?
yeah, I don't miss it one bit. And the guy who bought it, I
Hey,
don't even
pumpkin.
I don't even know, like, did he run it into the ground, or because I know that some clients may have gone away, uh, and he basically had access to me for a month after the sale, up to 25 hours a week. I think he probably did a grand total of 8 to 10 hours in that month, and then God bless him. Once in a while, I'll hear from him. Just a really minor question to which the answer is always no, and not yeah. And I'm a very much in the present kind of guy anyway. Uh,
Right.
and uh, and I want to share what happened when I did my first keynote.
Go ahead.
After I was done, I felt I was born to do this, and it was such a great feeling. Um, and
Did you have a manager or how do you get into
no,
that world?
so and, um, I reached out from the get go to get coaching and mentoring, and I do that to this day. Um, I'm in the Wealthy Speaker School, Jane Atkinson, amazing program. For people who want to really dial in to the business side. I've worked with David Avrin, who's a internationally renowned speaker, who's been phenomenal on the business side. Here in Boise, we've got Megan McCaleb, is my kind of everyday speaker coach, and So between having good people around me and then muddling a lot, because you know what, you can have the best people around you, you still got to pay your dues, and you still got to make the mistakes, and you got to show up every day, and throw out the trial balloons. Like my keynote is called "Fortune Favors the Bold." A more courageous company, a more courageous you.
Okay.
And a few weeks ago, I thought, boring, and so I thought, okay, you know what? Let's make it "Fortune Favors God Knows What."
I like that.
From hot mess to glorious success. Okay, and it was kind of like my Bob Dylan, 1965, Newport Folk Festival moment, right? I'm going electric. And people thought I was joking. Like my trusted advisors and coaches, they thought I was joking, right? And so I'm starting to push, "Fortune favors God knows what." And they're like, "Lewis, I have no idea what you're selling." Hey, Noni. Um, and So I retreated a bit, because I know, again, coming back to Bob Dylan, who's my father. I mean, not literally. He's kind of, he
Do you
could,
know Bob Dylan?
not personally.
Okay, all right, all right.
No, but he's a huge influence, like to the point that I want to do. I want to do my keynote at the Dylan Center in Tulsa. I want to do something, and I'm hoping that's going to occur in maybe in the
Let's make that happen. Everybody out there, say it again. Where do you want to be? The Tulsa Center or the Dylan
the
Center in
Dylan
Tulsa?
Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which I've never been to, but to me, like, Tulsa just seems like, exotic Americana, right? Like it's a magnet for.
Tulsa seems like exotic.
Oh yeah, Tornado Alley, baby. I'm
You're
there,
from
man.
LA, so I'm confused by that. I mean,
It,
I would think LA was exotic exotic Americana.
no, LA is where I grew up. It's familiar, right?
So
It's not.
where did you grow up at
I
specifically?
grew up in Monterey Park, which is in.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. So I know exactly where that is.
Yeah.
Because we used to have a place off of Barnum Way, which is, and I don't remember the street, but there's a street in Monterey Park where you drive down and it's nothing but um not factories, but you see factories and trucks, and then when you go up, um Monterey Park is beautiful. All those homes are on a hill.
Oh
They have
yeah.
beautiful views. Like it's
So
a hidden treasure.
no, it really is, and you probably know the hill that was the culminating hill of the Courage Run. It was a street called Vagabond Drive, and it went up
Yeah,
from Monterey Pass, and you went from the bottom to like the top of the world.
yeah.
Uh, it's probably 800 feet per mile. If you're to, I don't know, it's steep.
Yeah, I know where Vagabond Drive is. I don't necessarily recall going all the way up, but yeah,
Yeah, no,
I
you
do
can
know where
barely
it
make it up in a car.
is. So
Uh,
you grew up there. So when you were growing up in Monterey Park, it's did you live on the hill?
not on that big. We lived on a hill. We
On a
lived
hill.
on Lunar Drive.
All
Okay.
right. So one of the things about the Monterey Park area for everyone out there that wants to know is it's exquisite. The homes are beautiful. It's like being in Beverly Hills a little bit, but um, you have to drive through some sketchy areas sometimes when you're getting off the highway to get to the Monterey Park part.
Oh well,
Like it's not that far from South Central or like some type of because
well,
it's
we were
by
right
the
next to
Cal
East
State
LA.
LA. Right, right. Okay, so I didn't want to say that, but yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
it's right there. So you have East LA, and then you have like these beautiful, beautiful neighborhoods. The lawns are manicured perfectly. The views are amazing. You know, if you have a pool, normally it's looking out at, Cal State LA or something like that. And then at night it's
right.
nothing but lights, and it's just, I never knew it was there. I grew up in Culver City, and then when I, as an adult, lived in Studio City, as I said. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, Monterey Park is a hidden gem.
No, this is true. And my parents lived in the same house for about 60 years till we, I finally had to get them into assisted living. Um, and they've since passed away, but we brought our moms up to Boise with us when we moved like almost 2 years ago. Um, but we've since become orphans. My wife's mom passed away just a couple months ago.
Sorry about
Uh,
that.
Thank you. Um, I mean, they all live to be like 98 years old. Um, and I think they could have made it to 100 if they took better care of themselves. But
I'm going to pose a question to you because I just asked this to the audience, and please don't get upset. This has nothing to do with your mom or your mother-in-law.
don't worry about upsetting me. If I'm upset, I'll let you know.
So my aunt passed last month, but she suffered from Parkinson's. And during the end, she was really bedridden. She she couldn't go to the bathroom on her own. It was just bad.
Yeah,
And I just saw, and my aunt was very, 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 very. Um, she was a globetrotter. She was athletic. She was a skier, um, and she died at 80, 81.
yeah.
Um,
I'm
I just
sorry.
recently, you know what? It's fine because I didn't like seeing her like that. And
Right.
I know that she didn't want to live like that because it really
Yeah.
wasn't living. Um, so I saw this thing in Sweden, and it's called a suicide pod. And it's made like a, a coffin. You get into it, and within like a minute, you go into like a sleep. And I was thinking to myself, self, would I want to be a burden to my children if I
Right.
was in that type of state? And right now, not only is it a burden to your children, and they would do it, but then they're giving up their lives. Um, it's also a drain on your resources because unless you liquidate everything, then the hospice or wherever you're going to go is going to ask for all of your assets. So, what are your thoughts on, and let's not say suicide because that sounds negative,
Right.
but we plan births. People say, I want to have my child born on this day. If you not if you're suffering from depression, not because you're having a bad day, but
Right.
if your quality of life is so poor, do you think, because Switzerland just legalized it, do you think we should have the right to say, I'm done? I'm crapping on myself in the bed. And, what are your thoughts on that?
I thought when I came on here today that you were going to ask me deep questions.
That is a deep question. And it's kind of segueing into what I just went through.
Yeah.
And then I believe I had one aunt that lived to 99, and she
Yeah.
was driving all the way up through 98. So
Yeah.
that's a different scenario
No, I get it.
than someone who is basically um, kind of sit in the corner, we'll feed you, the eyes are glazed over, and are you really there? That's where I have the question.
I'm sympathetic, but I also the flip side is that the moment for that to occur is not clear cut. And I think it also takes something away from, those of us who are, say, taking care of them, um, because there's, and I'm thinking about my own parents,
Yep.
and their last few years. Like my mom, in some ways, was completely checked out, although she always knew who I was, and um, we kind of project our perspective as younger people onto being in that situation. Um, and the thing that I noticed with my mom and my dad and my mother-in-law, they they're just kind of living in the moment, and they're they're not thinking about, oh, I wish this was over, or oh, I wish whatever. They're just there, and we get to be a part of that, and to to be compassionate, and uh, like I can't imagine, if my parents had gone kind of more in their heyday, right? Maybe 5 years earlier, I feel like I would have missed out on so much. And maybe that's a selfish perspective, but I really do feel like it was such a blessing to spend that time with them. And by the same token, the idea of being able to call your own shots, um, but it's almost, the folks who you would think might benefit from that process are not it's not the older people. They're not going to know, like, so their relatives are going to say, oh, you're useless now, go check out.
Yeah, but I wouldn't do that to my daughter. I wouldn't have them make that decision. I would probably, if it became legalized here, would write
Mhm.
something down that says, if I get to this state, this is what I want to do. The same thing that you would do with the do not resuscitate.
Yeah, I don't
It,
know.
you know,
It's
it's, I, I don't know how I'll feel when I'm 90, right? I might say, no, let me keep going.
Yeah.
Um, but I want my kids to be able to live their life and not have to worry about me. Um, at a
I guess
certain
if they
stage.
could override the decision, then why not?
Yeah, I guess.
But
Um,
then that's putting a burden. That's a huge burden right there.
right. So I would take it off by saying this is what I
Yeah.
want, and they're just following my directives, and they get to say goodbye. It's a very this
We're not gonna, yeah, we're not gonna come up with a definitive here.
yeah, it just came up the other day, and I
Yeah.
saw it, and I was just like, would I do that? And when you look at the hospice costs and your funeral costs, and it's all in one bucket, and then I go peacefully as opposed to falling down 50 times and being in the I hate going to hospitals. I mean, I think most
Yeah.
of us do. Anyway, so that's a terrible subject.
Oh, it's a great subject, Bill. I'm gonna give you POA, so that you can send me off to the pods. I'm cool with it.
POA.
Yeah,
Okay,
power of attorney.
there you
I have
go.
to decide. You're gonna be the one who decides when I go.
I don't want that responsibility. But like my kids, they're 32, and Brooke has a 2-year-old,
Yeah,
and I'm a man of a particular age myself. So,
sure.
if there's a significant decline, if all of a sudden plus in the last couple of years, I'm sorry, I'm rambling. I watched my sister deteriorate from cancer,
Yeah,
and her final days, she's in diapers and no hair, and just
awful.
it wasn't. I'm not gonna say degrading. It wasn't a graceful exit.
Right. No,
You know,
I lost my sister to cancer as well.
it's
It's
horrible.
it
It's
is
horrible.
horrible. Yeah.
My cousin. literally told my sister, I can't stay here any longer, and it's okay for you to leave. And she left that night while my cousin was sitting there with her. This was 2 years ago or a year ago. Um, because we all flew up there
Yeah,
when we found out that she was in hospice. And, they let you know she has, anywhere from a week to 3 months. So we went up there immediately. But no one wanted her to be alone when she passed. So it,
that was 2 years ago.
yeah, I think it was no, maybe a year. It was in September. So maybe it'll be 2 years this September. So
That's
roughly a
rough.
year and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is rough, and it's rough when you have someone that is your contemporary, right?
Yeah.
We plan. We don't plan that's wrong, but we understand the circle of life.
Yes.
So generationally, we understand that our aunts will pass and our parents will pass, and but when it's your brother or your sister, it kind of hits differently because you're not necessarily prepared for that. So
No, it's true. I mean, my sister, she was a year older than me, my only sister, and she was a smoker, and she got um, cancer of the jaw.
uh,
And now she lived in New York,
so did
and,
Lisa.
and I felt like um, my sister, she's a badass. She's gonna beat this thing, and um, it was probably about a year long battle. It actually is probably going on even longer than that, but I think it took about a year for them to figure out what was wrong.
Okay,
And um, I remember getting a call from my brother-in-law saying, hey, if you want to see Annie, you should
come
come
now.
now. Um, no, 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 wait a minute. Before he said that, he said, this is how much of a badass my sister was. So my brother-in-law Ruben, he said that um, that Annie was not going to get over the cancer, better, whatever, right? So I hear him say that, and I'm thinking, oh, she's going to have some kind of treatment for the rest of her life. Didn't occur to me, it was just not in the realm of possibilities that cancers, no way. And and so I made a comment, and he's like, no, that's not what I meant. And it's like, what? And that was, man, that was rough. That was a rough time. uh I just remember, like, every day just having to pull over in the car and just sit there and cry. It was it was awful. And I can't even imagine what it was like for her.
Yeah, it was ours was a little bit different. Lisa was a vegan.
Uh-huh.
She was a health nut. She milked her own almonds, and they gave her 5 years. She had
Uh-huh.
stage 4 breast cancer, and she, because she was vegan and because she led a healthy life, she said she didn't want to take any Western medicine. That she
Right.
wanted to do a holistic approach, and that was very, very hard because if someone is in that shape, the only thing that you can do is support their decision, because anything else will cause more stress and then they won't open up to you. So, I was thinking, maybe you should take the treatments,
Yeah.
but it's not what she wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so I just supported it. And at a certain point, I believe that I don't think she wanted me to be sick. So that's not correct. But
Uh-huh.
I think in my mind, because it's a sibling rivalry, Bill eats fried chicken every freaking day, and he drinks like a fish, and he's just wild, and he doesn't get enough sleep. And
Yeah.
why have I done everything right, and I'm the one that's sick? So she got kind of hostile towards me,
Uh-huh.
and then and she never said that, but I'm like, where is this anger coming from?
Yeah.
Where is it coming from? Because I've been nothing but supportive to you, and I didn't say that to her either, but she blocked me, and then and I was like, you know what? I'm sorry to say this out loud, but I was like, screw her. I'm
Right.
done. I'm the one who always reaches out. I'm the one who always has to say I'm sorry. And then I got the phone call that said, I don't know what you two are going through, but you need to come up here now. And it's interesting how that shock sends you into let me get up there.
Yep.
And when I got there, she lit up. She
Of
had
course.
forgotten. She had forgotten that she blocked me. So it wasn't that I didn't try to reach out to her. She blocked my phone number for some reason. But when I got up there, she was, because the reason why I didn't take it personally is because we would always block each other.
Yeah.
We would speak every day, and then we wouldn't talk for like 6 months because we were tired of each other. And we would joke that even on vacations, because we would go
Uh-huh.
on vacation together sometimes, we could only go on vacation for 3 days. If we went to day 4, on the 4th day, we would get into some type of argument. So we would limit it to 3: the meet
Right.
and greet, the day trip, and then the, oh my God, I wish you could stay longer day.
Perfect.
Yeah, and that worked out. So um and then seeing her, it's just such a horrible disease. So
Oh my God.
I think we
Yeah.
hadn't spoken in about a year,
Right.
and by the time I saw her, she was nothing but a bone,
Yep.
and she was in hospice, and uh, she had 15 minutes maybe of like cognitive um, ability because it had spread to her brain. So we flew up there. She knew exactly who I was. Um, but then I said, okay, are you okay? Are you tired? Do you need me to leave? And she says, yeah, I need you to leave. And it would be like after about 30 minutes. And it wasn't because she didn't want me there. I could tell that it was just draining for her
Yeah.
to kind of keep up with the conversation. Um, Again, one of the things I love about this show is because it is unscripted. We end up going to places that
It's
are interesting. I mean,
no, it really is.
it,
I'm kind of reliving that time I went to visit my sister.
are you okay?
What's that?
Are you okay?
Yeah, no, I'm okay. I just think about what what it was like for her, and then I feel like my mom checked out after my sister passed away. She
Right.
never she wouldn't talk about her. Uh, Pretty much after that point, she didn't know my sister was gone. She didn't know her sister was gone. She didn't know her parents were gone. And so she would ask about them. And I learned to go along with whatever she was saying. Like
Right.
at first, I didn't realize that at first. So she would ask about my Aunt Sarah. And I'd say, oh, yeah, she's been gone for 10 years. And then she would get upset. And then some, I'm not the brightest bulb. Somebody explained to me, hey, you know what? Just go along with it. And then I became the expert at going along in a creative way. Um, like I wouldn't necessarily lie outright, although sometimes I would. but my mom would ask about her sister, and I'd say, oh, um, she lives far away, but she always asks about you, right?
Right.
I used to always pull that on my mom that, oh, everybody always asks about you, and that would make her so happy. Um, and I mean, my dad was not nearly as mixed up. He knew my sister was gone. He knew Aunt Sarah was gone, but he also, he was present enough to where he didn't upset my mom, and that was
What
and
what was the timeline between your dad and your mom's passing?
so my dad went first. That was at the end of 2022,
Okay.
and then we moved to Boise in August of 23. And by the way, my mom would never ask about my dad. Like, and she was in the room. We were both in the room, and there was a hospice nurse there, and we were all there when my dad passed away. Uh, and my mom, she's been gone about a year, a little bit over a year. So she hung out. She hung on almost a year and a half after my dad. Um,
Passed.
and yeah, and so I mean, I'm glad that they didn't pod themselves.
That's that's something that I want to do for me.
Well, I get that.
Under very specific circumstances. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
not saying, you know, just decide, okay, I'm done. But
yeah.
it, it's about quality of life. I don't know. I'm it's brand new to me. I just learned about this week. Kenneth Dunner told me to tell you,
Yeah,
please connect with him. And he also told me to tell everyone here that his comments are not going through on LinkedIn. He is commenting, but they're not working. So I don't know if that's a LinkedIn issue or a StreamYard issue. Um, but I've heard that a couple times before that the comments aren't showing up. And then after the program, I can see where everyone's been commenting and saying things. So yes. So the pod thing is something that's just very, very, very fresh. I wrote an
yeah,
article about it, I think Wednesday. That's how fresh it was. And I just saw it come
yeah.
up on an Instagram feed. And I was just thinking about how the pros and cons of it. Um, and I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. It's kind of like, cremation. That's a personal choice. I don't want people looking at my body. Um,
Right.
it's a for me it's a waste of money to and also I have this fear, talking about courage. I have
Uh-huh.
this fear of being in a box in the ground, even though I logically know that my soul's no longer in the body.
But what if it
Um,
is?
but what if it is, right? And I'm scratching to get
Oh,
out.
thanks for that. I hadn't thought of that.
You know,
Yeah,
I don't know. And people tend to move away. So, like, you're in Boise, right? I'm
yeah,
in Florida, but I was born in California. Or not, sorry, born in Chicago, but grew up in California for 40 years.
right.
Um, so where would I want to be buried? My kids are in LA, you know, and then do I expect them to come and visit me every 6 months? I'd rather, be on their shelf or turn myself into a ring and they just
Right.
keep me with them than to be someplace they have to go to
It,
look at a
you know,
stone.
um, so my wife is all about not being wasteful in death. And um, so if we get buried in a place called Pocatello, which is about 4 hours to the east of us, um, you don't even have to have a box. So we're thinking, just dump us in Pocatello. I have a fantasy about being dropped out of a Black Hawk into the ocean. Just 'cause, I mean, I've ridden in a Black Hawk about half a dozen times. I'm a civilian. I've never been in the military, but I've photographed military people, and I'm probably never happier than when I'm up in a Black Hawk, which is it's kind of like a flying Volkswagen, and it's really cool. And so I'm thinking, you know what, take me up while I'm still alive, okay, but
What?
calculate, do some calculations, figure, okay, we're almost done, fly out over the Pacific. It's a shout out to my heritage,
Right.
and and then just drop me out, and that'll be that. Um,
So hold on.
yeah.
So you're giving me crap about the pod, but you want to be breathing when they toss you out of the Black Hawk
Well, just
into the
barely,
ocean?
just barely, just like wait.
How are you gonna time that? Like,
It, science is advancing.
what if you're halfway through the air and you go, oh shit, not now?
No, that's it. That right.
Like you're already out of the Black Hawk, and all of a sudden you have this
It's too
revelation.
late, man. It's like, Lewis, you should have thought of that. I didn't think of that. Changed my mind.
So why? So two questions come to mind, and
Okay.
then we've been on here an hour and a half. It's amazing how time flies.
It
Um,
does.
my two-part question is: have you seen someone that's about to jump for the first time that freaks out? And then why haven't you, if you've gone up so many times, chosen, just like you did with the motorcycle, to go ahead and take some classes and jump yourself?
You know what? I'm willing to consider a tandem jump. I think that would be cool, but I also it's also not on my bucket list. But it will be. I tell people that here in Boise, they close for the winter, so I had to wait. I got to wait for the instructors to thaw out before I can jump.
Right.
My wife, she doesn't want me to do it when she's out of town on business a lot. She wants to be there to pick me up afterwards.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? Yeah. Where's Lewis? Oh, he's over there, and over there, and over there. So yeah. So she was. I don't know why she wants to do that, but it's also what I would really like to do, and it is on my website. I call it the leap of faith, and I'm gonna get 5 courageous business leaders, and we're gonna go on a tandem jump. And there's gonna be a before call and an after call, and we're gonna focus on one area that they want to become more bold. And so it's something people can sign up for. I'll put a custom group together, and I'll do it. I'm not rushing, I'm not in a hurry to jump out of an airplane. And I'm also telling people you don't have to jump out of an airplane.
Right.
So, but I think, no, you know what? And yeah, I do have fear about it. I think the biggest fear that I have of skydiving is the ground. I mean, it seems like everything else is survivable. I just, if something bad's going to happen, it's going to happen on the ground.
My fear would be like the chute doesn't come out, or it comes out and it's tangled. That would be my fear. And then I know at that point that I'm going to die, and I have to just live through it. So that's where I would come. What about like because of my age? What about like heart attacks and stuff like that? Is that a thing? That would be my other fear, that I would jump out and then all of a sudden,
oh, and have a heart attack.
Yeah, freaked out so much.
I hadn't thought of that. I'll have to add that to my list. I actually, in my keynote, in a version that I'm now kind of completely simplifying, but I talk about, I get up and I say, I've got one fear about skydiving. No, wait, two. I got three things, right? Stepping out of the airplane, the way down, and then landing. Oh, no, one more thing. One more thing is the drive to the airport, because it turns out that's the most dangerous part of skydiving is the drive to the airport, right? So now
Okay.
I can't even leave my house. Um, I mean, you can have a heart attack. You Something I discovered when we moved here, almost a year into it, all of a sudden I was having breathing problems, and I thought I had lung cancer because I'm a hypochondriac. And I got to be honest, I was kind of relieved. Um,
Relieved that you didn't have it, or relieved that you thought you had it?
Relieved that I thought I had it. It's like, wow, all these things I get to avoid. Um, and and I'm thinking, okay, yeah, they'll give me drugs, and if it gets to be too much, you know, off I go. But
Right.
this is how my mind works. And I made a farewell video, and my wife was out of town, and I posted it. And no, because everything is stand-up material. So by God, I'm gonna I'm gonna get a bit out of
Right.
lung cancer. And then they said, no, it's not lung cancer, but we got to check out your heart, right? Because there was a spot on my lungs, and I'm thinking, no, my heart's fine. It's got to be lung cancer. Okay, this is how a hypochondriac thinks. And I mean, it'd be great if I was also a masochist, because then it's like not only do you think you're dying, but you enjoy it. I'm getting some good material today.
That's
But no, people get demoralized when they come see me do stand up. And it's a downward spiral. I'll make you regret inviting me yet.
Go ahead.
But I've yeah, so I posted my farewell video, and then my wife calls, and she's like, "What the fuck?" Oh,
So you didn't tell her you were posting this video
no,
in advance?
I didn't want her to worry.
Okay, so instead you post a public video. All of her friends call her and say, "What's going on with Lewis?" And
Pretty much.
she's like, "What's going on with you? Why don't I know about this?"
No, and she's stayed with me all these years, so God bless her.
The
She'd
woman's a
probably want
saint.
to sign me up for the pod.
I'll send her the link. I'll send you the link, and you can just give it to her.
Yeah, she'll be like, "Why are you sending me this?" But no, I actually did go to a suicide intervention training up here at the air base a few months ago.
What took you there? Like,
Uh,
what made you go there?
so I am involved in a group called the ESGR, which is Employer Support of Guard and Reserve. It's
Okay.
part of it's a volunteer component of the DoD. And we basically go out and we recognize employers who are doing the right thing by their soldiers, and it's a really cool organization. I originally started in the group as a photographer, and that's one of the reasons I've been up in Blackhawk so many times. But I'm now also I've graduated into being a presenter. Although I haven't done a presentation yet. I'm going to be doing my first one probably in June, but anyway, so I was at an ESGR event and I met I met a retired, a vet who is basically working with the soldiers, the guardsmen, and to prevent suicide and also to train people. And so he invited me to come up. I was the only civilian in the course. There were about 10 of us in the class. It was a 2-day training. And you actually, you don't have to go to a military base or be in the military to get this kind of training. And it's very valuable because you learn that you don't have to know exactly what to tell the person. If you essentially engage in conversation with somebody who's not okay, you can hand them off, right? But you learn you learn some of the kind of questions to ask. Essentially, you want to get them to pause.
Right.
And
is there a higher rate of suicide amongst people that are enlisted than civilians, or?
I don't know if it's higher. I don't know the stats. I know that it's too high, and there's you hear the statistic being batted around that it's like 22 a day.
Wow.
It's I mean it's significant, and you think, wow, these are people who serve. We don't want anything bad to happen to them, and I'm glad. Look, even though I don't know the answer to that question, I'm glad that there are programs and that people are talking about it, and that's and that goes for civilians too. There's, I think, mental health has been thrust into the spotlight, and we're learning more and more to not stigmatize people.
I don't think we should.
No, we absolutely should not. And I mean, a lot of people do contemplate suicide. That doesn't mean they're suicidal, right?
We have
So,
rough days. I mean, there are days where it feels like the world's on our shoulder, and it just happens. I mean, I'm not saying I've thought about it, and I'm not saying I haven't.
right?
But I've had days where I'm like, damn, nothing's going right.
Yeah.
Nothing's going right. Like my life is chaos, and this isn't living. Not to say that I went out and did anything on it or acted on it or even really, really contemplated it, but it's that age-old question: what is the meaning of life?
Yeah. And when you bring that up, I'm reminded of my favorite professor at UC Santa Barbara, Dr. Iyer, Raghavan Iyer. And he asked us a very simple but profound question. He asked us, why were you born? And it's something that I keep coming back to it. And I actually even reached out to his son, Pico, who's a renowned writer, and I, very simple thing, I just told him how that question has stuck with me all these years. I mean, he wrote me back like in minutes, and was very appreciative. And I'm bringing that up because one key act of courage that we can all do is to reach out to somebody and let them know about something that they did that impacted us.
100, 100.
Right? And it could be something that they did or something, his father passed away, my professor, but I wanted the son to know,
Yeah.
right? Because he is his father's son, and I'm my father's son, and so I'm big on the idea of, you know, kind of pinging people almost at random. When you think of something that they did, or uh, to me, that I just love to do that.
At my age, I
Mm.
have to do it when I'm thinking about it, which I appreciate because there's so many times where I've thought about something when I was younger and I didn't follow up on it, and then it was too late. So now, if you
Yeah,
pop into my mind, Lewis, I'm going to go, Lewis, you know what? That day that, you popped on my podcast and you were so transparent and we talked about this, I learned so much from that. And you might not realize it because you're like, oh, I was just talking. But I believe that, first of all, we're all here intertwined for a reason,
yeah.
and that if we listen with intention, we're able to learn something, no matter how old we are, um, from somebody else. So this, what you just said about reaching out and pinging people randomly, is something that I have to do or I'll forget, and I never want to forget.
No, and I mean, think about it, because you might say something at the exact moment that that person needed to hear it. They might be one of those soldiers who's thinking about taking their life, and
Right.
then you tell them, hey, remember that time that we were at such and such, and you said this, right? And then it's like, boom, wow, back in.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and it reminds you that you did make an impact on somebody right in the moment where you're questioning, what has my impact been? So
Yeah.
Kenneth wants me to tell you again that no one's comments are coming through, but he is listening, and that you viewed his profile and that he wants you to connect with him. He said he viewed yours as well,
Okay.
and that he's jumped twice in his life from a plane.
Cool. And he's I'm sure he's saying just do it.
He didn't say that. He said, actually, what did he say? He said, I skydived twice in '78, even before I flew on a commercial airplane. I was in New York at the time.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was actually surprised because when he said in '78, actually that would have been too late. I was thinking Vietnam, but that was in the '60s.
No, this is true.
Right.
And early 70s. I actually do a bit about Vietnam, because most of the people who show up to these open mics that I go to are way, way younger than me. And so they're going to assume I went to Vietnam, but I didn't. They sent me to preschool instead, which was, I mean, preschool was my Vietnam.
Right.
Yeah, it was
It,
horrible.
it was a different time. My daughter, my grandsons too. I I was a latchkey kid,
Uh-huh.
and we would walk back and forth, from school to home. And then when I got home, my mom was a single parent, so um, she was a widow at 28.
Oh,
So
wow.
when I got home, she would call the house. We didn't have cell phones back then, and I had to
Yep.
answer the phone by a specific time, or
Yep.
we'd all get in trouble. And speed things up. And my daughter refuses to let her kid even go to daycare, which is great, until
Uh-huh.
until he's 5 and can talk and can say, you know, articulate what his day was like. And it's just a whole different vibe, I think, the way that people are rearing their children. My daughters themselves didn't take public transportation until they were teenagers. And I remember I left Chicago at 12, and me and my cousins would take the Chicago transit system to go see Star Wars. So that was like 10. We're on the
Uh,
bus, and then taking the train, and it's way different. What was your experience like? Were you coddled, or were you like thrown to
I
the
was
wolves like me?
coddled. No, I was coddled because my grandparents on my mom's side lived with us,
Ah,
and so one of the grandparents would walk me to school, like kindergarten, first grade. My grandma used to embarrass me because she grew up in the old country in Russia, and I would forget to bring my lunch, and so she would walk to school, bring my lunch, and yell at me, in front of everybody, which was horrifying. And if I had any shame, or I was forgetful,
yeah.
and so it happened more than once. Um, and this is why to this day I refuse to visit her grave. No, I didn't. Yes.
You're a mess.
Oh man, no, no. Actually, I do visit the graves when I'm in LA. The whole family's down there, but my sister's buried in New York, and they're gonna throw us into a hole in Pocatello, and that'll
that
be that.
that's my whole thing about the burial is, if
It's,
they have my ashes, just take me everywhere. Just take me with you in a little locket. Um, I was gonna say something, and it
uh,
was gonna be super profound, but now I've forgotten.
sorry.
No, it's just
Write it down, damn it.
it's a senior moment. Um,
It's
and of course, it was going to be the best thing that I was going to say all day.
Well, it's easy for you to say that now that
I
you
know, I know
really
that
forgot. I'm
that's my
sure you
favorite
did.
line. Yeah, that's my favorite line. Um, I don't remember what it was. Jeez. Anyway,
You know what? You'll remember, or you won't, or you'll remember it, after we're off the
I'll
call.
text it to you. Yeah. So that's. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I remember in junior high, someone's parent coming to school with a belt in their hand in the middle of the
Oh,
day. And
uh,
today, if a parent showed up to school with a belt in their hand, they would call Child and Family Services.
absolutely.
And when I was growing up, your neighbors could chastise you. And then
Yep.
when you got home, your parents would do it again. So it was like a
Yep.
community. And today, if anyone, my daughter kind of tapped my grandson's hand because he was doing something that he wasn't supposed to be doing, and her sister freaked out, and her husband freaked out. You do not touch our son. That's not how we raise him. And
Yeah.
it's a totally different type of vibe. And I doubt that the ant hit the hand that hard. I'm sure it was like a tap,
Right.
but it even from family, it's they are very, very conscious of how you talk and treat and correct their child. Um, and I don't know if it's better or not.
To me, it's out of control. I'm thinking about one time, uh, my kid was probably 6 years old, 5, 6, young, maybe 4 even, and we were at a birthday party in the park, and I used to swing my kid upside down, right?
Yep,
Like, I was
we
a
all
big,
did.
we all did, and this other kid. comes up and tries to kick my kid in the head,
What?
right? Yeah. And I mean, I was quick, so nobody got hurt, but I yelled at that kid. I said, "You don't ever do that."
Right.
Right? And so he ran off
Crying.
crying and tells his parents, and the parents told him, "Oh, you don't have to listen to Mr. Katz," right?
Yeah, but I think that sends that we were raised to respect our elders
Yeah.
and parental figures and figures of authority. And I think one of the things that's occurring, especially in like the 30 something generation, 20 something generation, is even in the workspace, they don't respect authority. They feel entitled,
Yep.
and then they are freaked out when someone uses the word no to them because it's something that they're not used to hearing. Because in their mind, they're supposed to be a vice president after 6 months of work. Where's
Right.
my promotion? Where's my raise? Where's my new title? You're 24 years old. You've worked here for 2 months. What are you talking about?
Right.
Anyway,
I I think reality is gonna kick him in the head. Uh, right. So it's unfortunate that anybody should feel entitled in general, in my opinion.
yeah,
Um, and I think that sense of entitlement makes life difficult for those of us who know better. But it's also the beauty of it is that if you throw your sense of entitlement around in the wrong place, you will get educated. And
hopefully, hopefully,
it, yeah,
because they're willing. So you and I grew up in a day and age, I'm sure, where you know you work for a job for 5 years.
right?
My aunt grew up in a world where you work for a job for 30 years.
Yes.
These kids are jumping around every 6 months, and to me, that's always been a red flag. Like, okay, why didn't you stay here that long? Why didn't you stay here that long? Why are you jumping? You seem like you're erratic, and you looks like you're getting fired every place. But that's just there's no loyalty. There's no brand loyalty. There's no job loyalty. Um, and I think part of that is because the jobs of our time weren't loyal to us. I mean, they basically they had the right to fire you, but they expected
Right.
you to give a 2 week notice. So I don't know
And
if it's better, if it's worse, if they're more if they're more confident than we were. Um, but I'm not. I've never just dropped a job just because.
no, I have like, but they were kind of
Well,
temp.
yeah,
Like I've walked into a situation where it was, um,
you felt it wasn't right.
I felt it wasn't right.
Yeah,
So I I think it's really popular to bash the whoever's the younger generation. Um, it's a time honored tradition to say that the world is going to hell in a handbasket based on the actions of the next generation. And God forbid, if it's multiple generations, we think, oh my God, there's no way I'm gonna go sign up for the pod now. Um,
so to be clear, there are not multiple generations behind me that I
no,
acknowledge.
I'm not
That
talking about you. I'm just
that I acknowledge. Maybe there are, but I don't acknowledge that. There's only one generation
it's
beyond me.
no, I'm speaking in general terms here
Yeah,
that every generation thinks that the next one is like, oh my God, how they can't even zip up their own pants.
but
Uh,
but similarly, every new generation thinks the older generation is dumb as hell.
This is true.
Because I remember, you remember this too. Like my grandmother couldn't program a VCR or use call waiting.
Right.
I'd have to tell her, it's beeping, click it over. Now there are no VCRs, and I cannot figure out for the life of me how to make an AI generated video, let's say,
Uh-huh.
which my grandson at 2 probably can do.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it. I mean, at a certain point, we become relics,
Nope.
and
Stop it. We're not relics. We will always be relevant. That's why we're doing podcasts, so that we can show.
Well, no,
and
but
you're doing stand up and all this other stuff. God, not relics, please.
No, I stand by that. Here's
the
the
views
thing.
of Lewis Katz are not the views of
Yeah. Put the
UBU
disclaimer
Live.
in the crawl at the bottom. But here's the thing. Okay, you bring up a great point. So these younger generations, they're going to know things that we can't possibly know, or we're either indifferent or we have other priorities. We know things that they don't. If we can live and let live, we can learn from each other.
Yeah, I agree.
And right. So, I mean, my dad used to call himself an old fossil, but he said it with humor because he knew that he had intrinsic value, and I use the term relics in the same loving way. That
Loving.
Yeah.
My daughter keeps calling me a boomer. I get very, very offended by that.
Well, are you?
No, I think my mother was. I think
What year? What
I
year
think
were you born?
none of your business. The 70s.
You're just a baby.
The early 70s. Like 1970.
Yeah, so I've got some laps on you, but my dad went, but my dad was awesome, and my mom, but my dad, if you would ask him how he was doing, he'd say not bad for a young kid, and he was saying this in his 90s, and I love that. And I actually, I started doing AI music pretty heavily.
What?
Yeah.
So you're generating your own music?
I am. And I actually used one in my closing of my speech. And I named, the band Not Bad for a Young Kid. Eventually, I want to take this stuff and use it as it's meant to be, which is as a storyboard. And I want to get a producer, engineer, whatever, and have musicians take this material, beyond the 95%, take it to 100%, so that it's like, yeah, we use AI, but we're giving it the twist. But
what do you use to make the music? Which platform?
I'm using Suno. I write the lyrics in Chat GPT, and then I bring it into Suno.
Okay, so with Suno, let's get away from the lyrics.
Yeah.
You're able to create the beats?
The whole thing. I tell it, make a surf rock, blah, blah, blah. And
what's the cost?
$10 a month. It's
wow.
Yeah.
I'm about to go get me some Suno, because
definitely.
Yeah, I want to do it because I actually was trying to build an intro for this show, and it's a 30-second clip, and I couldn't get the music to go with the video because everything is proprietary. So you've taught me something. Spell Suno again, please.
What was that?
Spell Suno.
Suno.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to become a rock star.
Cool. I'm trying to find.
You want to share some of your music?
I do. You know what? I'm gonna go to SoundCloud. And let's see here. All right, I think, let's see, am I in the right? Okay, I don't think this is my. All right, I know dead air is
No. We're good.
We're good.
Yeah.
Well, let's see here.
I'm just looking up Suno. Suno AI musical.
Oh, here we go.
Kenneth is waiting to hear your music.
Says it's playing. Oh, I got the spinning beach ball. Hang on. So my tagline for my bits is standing in a field, open skies above. Are you hearing it?
Yeah.
But still I feel alone. With every breath I swallow, I wonder what I've done. Live large, people, have faith in nothing. Why does my heart feel free in the sun? Live large, people, have faith in nothing. When the world is calm, the soul's on the run. I mean, that's kick ass, right?
It was good. Yeah. How did you get the voice? Like, how did you choose a female over a male vocalist, and then the tone of her voice? Did you have to play with that, or?
I did a whole so basically I had the lyrics that I'm amazing at prompts in Chat GPT. Okay, that's like one of my superpowers. And I gave it kind of the tone like I wanted, because live large, be bold, have faith, fear nothing. That's my tagline. And but I also like I didn't want it to be like rah rah, yeah, let's take over the world. It was,
It was good.
I wanted to also recognize that when we do that, there's also a part of us that's kind of holding back, and there's kind of a bittersweet vibe as well. And so I put that into the prompt for Suno, and then I just kept generating until I got what I wanted. Right. So it's not. Now there may be other tools that people use where you can really nail it, but that's I don't know if that exists, and it also, like, some of the other music generating tools are not as easy. Like Suno, it's like you just throw it in there and it's like, oh yeah, I like this one.
Can you upload a current song that you like the beat to, and tell them not to use the exact same beat, but this is the tempo and kind of the crescendo and drop that you want.
I believe you can do that. I haven't, but I think you can. Um, and I haven't been doing as much with it lately. And I've generated a ton of songs, um, and then I'm, shiny objects. Some on to the next thing, but it's there, and I've, I use it as part of my branding.
That was really good. So how is that going to disrupt the music industry if you can just now all of a sudden you're a singer? Uh, do you remember back in the 90s when they went through all of that rigmarole where they would have someone singing the song and then other people in the videos lip syncing it? So the real singer was like 5 different people, but I think Milli Vanilli was part of that. The house
Right.
music had some. I think Mark the Wash was a big component of like the house music stuff. Uh, so how are we going to survive this? Where now you can put that out, and not only can you put that out, but you can make an AI generated image that
Oh, yeah.
becomes a video. You know,
It's so it's going to be like all the other tools that have come up, where the creative geniuses, are going to use the tools to uh,
leverage them to.
they're going to leverage the tools to basically get a bigger footprint. It's a force. It's a force multiplier, is what it is.
So you'll think the rich will just get richer, the artist will just get bolder, and the little guy isn't really gonna make that big of an impact.
No, I think little guys are going to have tools that allow them to make an impact that they didn't have before.
Right. So a lot of these big stars right now came from YouTube.
Yep.
They didn't really put in dues. Somehow, I love the Kardashians, by the way, but somehow like social media has created these stars. And when you
Right.
ask yourself, what did they do to get there? They sent a tweet, or
Yeah.
they took 100 pictures of themselves and someone liked it and it just went viral. It's not really a an indication of talent, although the reason why I say I'm not talking bad about the Kardashians is
Mhm.
because regardless of how they got there, they were able to turn that into $1 billion empire. And so
Absolutely.
that takes effort. And so anyone who says they don't have talent, they're looking in the wrong direction, because they built something out of literally nothing. They took advantage of a new gateway and they just barreled through it. And then they keep having children, so the show can go on for like 100 different years, because each one of them keeps growing up, and then they're taking on their own little audience.
Right. Till people get tired of it. And
Well,
right.
you might get tired of Kim, but then here comes North. I mean, I no longer watch it, but North has her own little Kanye's daughter,
Yeah.
her own little following. Uh, I saw a clip of a concert of Beyonce, and her little daughter is now the star of the show, and you can see that she's setting her up to be, so she can retire, and then that little kid will take over. It's just it's a
Yeah.
dynasty.
It's a dynasty. It's a legacy. I mean, and it doesn't always pay off. Like I think of Frank Sinatra and Nancy Sinatra.
Right,
I'm sure she did fine in life, but not as a pop singer. Uh,
right.
yeah, I mean, she had a couple of hits, but
Boots were made for walking, I think, was the only one I really remember.
there's I want to say the theme song to "You Only Live Twice." That was a Nancy Sinatra song. I mean,
Okay.
maybe it wasn't big hit. But uh, and the people listening to us now are saying
Woo!
Sinatra, what? Sinatra um,
Right.
is, but
You
yeah,
have to have you have to have the talent. You have to have the backing.
you
Your
do.
name gets you through the door, right? But if you're not,
If you can't back it up, I mean, you might be a one hit wonder.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
Whether in music or life in general, I think works that way, where people want to know, well, what have you done for me lately?
That's where I was about to go. By the way, I don't know if you
I,
did that intentionally, but for a there's 20 million Jacksons, right?
yeah,
Um, and Michael was the only one who took off, and then somehow Janet kind of got in the door and then kicked it down. Uh,
uh-huh.
and she had her own. My opinion is that the Super Bowl ruined her trajectory because she was really at the top of her game when that happened, and then
Yeah,
they stopped playing her records. So, um, but she was killing it, and it was
yeah,
her talent that got her through, not her name. Um, but we are hitting the 2 hour and 10 minute mark, my friend.
amazing.
It
Yeah,
is amazing because it doesn't feel like that. But
has anybody shuffled off this mortal coil while we've been? It's been a while.
so no, they're still here. They're just having problems commenting is what Kenneth keeps telling me. So Kenneth is sending me private messages through LinkedIn, and
Yeah.
he's telling me, read my comments out loud, verbatim, no improvisation, please. He's such a funny person. Okay, so I have to read your comment. I'm sorry. Let me get through all of Kenneth's comments before you leave. Okay, I'm going to start with I skydived twice in 1978 even
Okay.
before I flew on a commercial airplane. I was in college in Rochester, New York at the time. So that was one. Then he said, why did Lewis Katz not check out my LinkedIn profile? Not check out my LinkedIn profile. I checked out his LinkedIn profile. So he wants you to connect with him. Remember that my comments are not showing up again. Uh, let's hear this person's delectable, scrumptiously, deliciously edible, tasty, good, heartfelt sounding music. Then he said, louder, honey. And I said, that was loud. And then he
It's
said, then
pretty
my
loud.
ears,
I'm gonna get
then,
a hearing aid.
then he said, my ears are old. And then he said, today's conversation is so damn delectable, scrumptiously delicious, edibly tasty goods. Read my comments out loud, verbatim, no improvisation, please. So, Kenneth,
Yes.
I hope I did that correctly. Um, I
Is
told
that what
you don't want to mess with him. He he he's like, don't improvise. I think I did say earlier, oh, Kenneth said this, but I didn't read
Oh yeah.
everything that he said. So I have done it, Kenneth, and I really, really appreciate you. Um, any final thoughts, Lewis Katz? We have to do this again one day.
No, absolutely. This was fun.
It
I
always is.
Yeah,
We're making friends, and at a certain point in your life, it's not as easy to connect with people. And that's one of the things I love about the podcast. That's one of the things I love about not knowing the person before they come on. And as I told you earlier, we just go wherever the conversation takes us. And it took us all over the place. Um,
man, we were so all over the map.
yeah. So I want you to take a moment just to promote how to get in contact with you, how to get you scheduled for a keynote speaker event, anything that you want to share, when you'll be live next in Boise.
Yeah, no, I mean, I go to a lot of open mics, so people are welcome to show up there. My website is thecourageinside.com. Um, I am on LinkedIn consistently. I typically post multiple articles a day. Um, I'm also doing a for all you Bob Dylan fans.
Bob Dylan.
I'm doing a daily dispatch, like every day for a year, from Desolation Row, which is
Wow.
like one of his most amazing songs. It's like an 11-minute song on Highway 61 revisited. It's the only non-electric song on that album. You know, this is after he basically told the folk world to take a hike. You know, he said, "I'm going to do it my way." Um, and this song has always inspired me, and so now I'm doing a daily dispatch, um, and I'm intertwining it with a novel in progress of mine called the Circus Comes to Sketchtown. Uh, anyway, it's so I'm doing that. So LinkedIn, YouTube, I put that in the chat. Um, where you can get a sense of my personality, although you're kind of getting it here today. Um, yeah, let's see. But yeah, follow me on LinkedIn is probably the best because I even give out my website and my phone number, direct line, no filter. Um, and I would love for you to book me for a keynote, workshop, um, special event. You know, I can MC. I do kind of a Jimi Hendrix inspired version of the Star Spangled Banner on harmonica. So if you've got a July 4th event where you need the Star Spangled Banner, I'm your guy. I think that would be really cool to do.
So that's amazing. And if any of you guys missed it, which I'm sure that you did, Lewis played the harmonica in the opening. He played two different types of harmonica, and I'm not going to try to distinguish between the two because I'm not that educated, but it was really good. Um, the question I have for you, Lewis, is when you're doing your keynote speaking, is it limited to a driving area, or do you go all across the nation?
No, I'll go anywhere. You know, I mean, obviously, if the budget is there, I'll show up. I'll even go to, I don't know why Finland pops into mind. Finland is not an easy country to make fun of. But I'll go to Finland. I'll go to Dubai is
Oh,
popular.
I'd love to go to Dubai too.
I'll go to Pocatello, which is here in Idaho. Since we mentioned them,
That's where you're going to be. That's where you're going to be disposed of, right?
yes. So if the keynote goes badly, we can make it, a two for one,
Two for, yeah.
a two for right. But I look, I could riff off this question for a long time, and I don't want to waste everybody's time.
I don't think you are, and everyone wants to know, like how you and I got in contact. And I said it in the beginning. I read your profile. I think you might have looked at mine, and then I kind of looked at yours, and I read the courage part, and I thought about, as I told you, my fear of going live, and you accepted my request. So we don't know each other. We just like just like any of my other guests, I meet them live on air, and we just have great conversation, and we leave hopefully feeling like we have a new friend. And you are always welcome. I will put your information in an article that I'll send out later today or tomorrow. Depends. I'm getting older, so it's about my bedtime, and I need to eat.
Right? Man, it's almost 6:30.
I know. Yeah.
So here in Boise, we're in the mountain time zone, and at this time of year, it doesn't get dark till 9:30 at night, and so there's a lot of tension. Like, do I wait till it gets dark, or do I go to bed at 6:30?
Do you guys respect the rollback of time or not?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Uh,
I think that
and
I think that's such a waste. It literally throws me off every year.
I think we should eliminate time altogether.
Hey,
Uh, and just, we'll show up when we do. Um, could you imagine that? Good God.
yeah,
Uh,
it would be fantastic and less stress and less traffic. Not everyone would be trying to get every place at the exact same time and leave at the exact same time.
no, we would never show up at the same time.
Right.
It's, for a comedian, that would be amazing. But for everybody else to be like, can we maybe settle on something?
Right.
Uh, it's not, I feel like I should have a disclaimer on everything I say and do, but it's, I'm glad to be on your show. This is fun.
I am glad to have you. Um, I appreciate everyone coming and everyone showing up. I am sorry about the technical issues that people cannot leave comments, but I know that you're there. I've seen it on YouTube. I've seen some things I've been checking on LinkedIn. So everything looks like the views are there. I don't know why comments are not sticking or coming through, but I will check on that later because I heard about this in our last one. Lewis,
Yes, sir.
keep in touch. I will send out something with all of your contact information on it. Uh, Again, I'm not going to lie. It'll probably be tomorrow.
No, that's okay. Can I tell them that every dollar they Venmo to you, that 50 cents coming to
then
me?
I don't get any money for this. I do it because um, I like meeting people, and I started it because I started a job search at over 50, and I wanted to basically um, document it and
Uh,
document what I went through. So that's how my article started. That's how my followers started. So the followers came within the last year, and then outside of the articles, I think this is my 8th or 9th episode of
uh-huh.
the UBU Live. So outside of the articles, I decided, hey, why don't I put a face to the articles, let them know that I'm a real person. So that's why I did this part.
That's cool.
They mute themselves. Okay, so I'm not sure what that means. So Kenneth said, I can't have my comments up. They mute themselves. I don't understand what that means. But it sounds like there's some type of issue between LinkedIn not transferring comments in or out. But
Uh,
I appreciate you, Lewis. I'm going to sign out. And anything else that you want to address before we close out?
no, I'm just gonna stay on for anybody who wants to send you money to your Venmo. Um,
There's no Venmo.
50 cents of every dollar you send to Bill comes to me.
There you
Uh,
go.
that's just how it works. We're a split down the middle team,
There you go.
right? Fair is fair.
Hey,
Uh,
so let's create a Venmo account then, because
no, I don't know. Do you have all the money that you need?
I don't.
Yeah, send money.
I wish, but I don't do this to monetize it.
No,
I'm just
you're a celebrity, man. I just, you got like 30,000 subscribers or something. It's crazy. But
that means nothing. That
I,
that
oh, tell
that
me about it. I have even less than that. But
that means nothing.
you know,
I appreciate it though. I do, and I'm
we
always
can't all be
shocked.
Kenneth.
We, he's amazing, like really amazing. He's yelling at me right now, so we need to get off because he's gonna
All
keep
right.
yelling on. Noni and Chris are staying quiet. They are just listening. Gotcha.
They don't
So,
know what to think about where this has gone. But
well, I don't know why Noni and Chris are staying quiet and just listening. I mean, I wish they'd comment. I actually went on Noni's podcast on Friday, and literally I sang. And we're talking about Profile of Courage. I'm not a singer, and it was to the Spice Girls. So
wow.
that is that's a testament of her magnetism to get me to do that.
You know what? Maybe you and me will do the Star Spangled Banner together. You sing and I'll play the harmonica.
You will never speak to me again if I sang.
No, I would absolutely, because wait till you hear what it sounds like on the harmonica.
Why don't you play us out?
Yep. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lewis Katz. No, home of the praise. That is the best outro that I've had yet. Thank you so much, Lewis Katz. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much, Nona, Josette, and anyone out there that's listening. I really am overwhelmed by the support. Lewis, keep connected. Anytime you want to come back on, just let me know. Huh?
You forgot to mention Kenneth.
I did mention Kenneth.
Oh.
And you need to connect with Kenneth, because Kenneth is
no,
waiting for you to connect.
My life has no meaning without Kenneth.
There you go. Neither does mine.
All right.
All right, man. I'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.